my class, so we're going to take a look at the derivatives of sine and cosine, and we're going to do this by looking at their graphs. So here is the sketch of the sine function, right? Sine starts at 0, then I go up and I repeat the cycle. So let's actually fill in what we think these are going to be. So let me just change the color of my line here, so that way it's easier for them to see. But let's take a look at the slope at negative pi. So negative pi is around here. If I were to draw the slope of a tangent line right here, let's move this a little bit. Alright, if I'm taking a look at the slope of a tangent line, this actually looks like it could be a one-to-one slope. So let me do this again. Right here. Right? If I do my delta x over my delta y over my delta x, it looks like we have a slope of approximately, let's say, negative 1. Okay? Well, let's move on, and let's take a look at the slope at negative pi. The slope at, negative pi over 2. The slope at negative pi over 2, this is pi over 2 right here, is about a horizontal line, right? Well, actually, it is a horizontal line. So if I take a look, what's the slope of a horizontal line? Correct, it should be 0, right here. So I'm going to continue, and let's take a look at the slope at 0. So the slope here at 0 looks very similar to this slope, except instead of going downwards, I'm going upwards, which means I have a slope of 1. If you see the pattern here, that happens to the slope at pi over 2. The slope of the sine curve is a horizontal line, which gives me a slope of 0. And then, once again, just to complete this, the slope at approximately, at approximately, let me do that again, right here, and I'm going to move it down here. It's actually about negative 1 again. So what do you think is going to happen to the slope of sine? You're right, it's going to repeat over and over and over again. Well, let's actually take a look of what cosine is at all these different functions. So you can either use your unit circle or if you memorize them. But if we take a look, cosine starts at 1, right? Starts at 1, and then it goes down, and pi over 2 is going to hit 0, and then it's going to hit the bottom, which is negative 1, and then repeat off again. Right? If I go the opposite way, so let's just sketch this so you guys can see. Right? If I go the opposite way, negative pi over 2 is equal to 0, negative pi is equal to negative 1. So by comparing these two rows, you can see that the slope of sine is the same as the value of cosine. So what we say is the derivative of sine is actually equal to the cosine of x. Good. So if I wanted to, let's take a look at the cosine function, which is right here. So, like we said, let's take a look at these slopes at certain areas. And let's start with negative pi. Okay. The slope at negative pi is a horizontal line, which we know from earlier is 0. Okay. And then if I take a look at the slope up here, I get a slope of about 1, and it's upwards, it's a positive 1. Then again, I hit the top of the cosine curve at 0, which gives me a slope of 0. Then at pi over 2, I'm going to go downwards, which is about a negative 1. And then if I take a look at pi, right here, you see, pi right here, I get a 0 again. So what do you think is going to happen to this function right here? It's going to repeat, right? 1, 0, -1. Well, let's compare this to the value of sine. Let's start at 0. Actually, let's just take a look at this graph here. At negative pi, the value is 0. At 0, the value is 0. And at pi, the value is 0. So I know negative pi is 0, 0 is 0, and pi is 0. But let's take a look at negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So if I look at negative pi over 2, the value is actually at negative 1. So I'm going to mark a negative 1 here. And if I look at positive pi over 2, my value is at positive 1. So if you were to conclude what the derivative of cosine would be, what would you say it would be? Well, yes, I'm going to take a look at the sine curve, but instead of it being exactly the same, the cosine of x is actually negative sine of x. So keep this in mind. Just make sure you know that the derivative of sine of x is equal to cosine of x, while the derivative of cosine of x is equal to negative sine of x. We're going to be using this in the next couple of sections and problems, so please make sure this is something to remember. And then later on we'll go over the other 4 derivatives of the trig functions for secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. Alright? So once again, make sure you know these pieces because we'll be looking at them in the next couple of sections.